So I try not to be too hard on the Krag because it is the first general issue bolt-action rifle issued to everybody in the United States military. What's interesting is it's really a quantum leap to go from a Trapdoor Springfield to a Krag, but the Krag had already been leapt over.
By committing to the Krag design early on, the U.S. military marries itself to that design through this critical moment when the Mauser comes into its own. And let's face it, the Mauser eclipses the Krag. The Mauser is the more reliable, it's the better design in every way. But at the point when the American military commits to the Krag, we don't know that yet. Nobody had a crystal ball that could tell them in just a few years there's not going to be anything else that can be done to the Krag to modernize and improve the rifle.
The problem with the Krag design was there were some deficiencies, and these became readily apparent during the Spanish-American War. The first thing is, the way that you load the gun is you hinge this door open and you basically just dump rounds into the magazine and then you snap the door shut. Well, this wasn't a great design when it comes to the ease and speed of reloading, and it was outclassed by the 1893 Mauser, which is what the Spanish troops were using during the Spanish-American War. And the Mauser, of course, used stripper clips, and so you could quickly strip 5 rounds into the top of the action, and then you were back in the fight. The other problem with the Krag design, it's a beautifully smooth action. It's one of the smoothest bolt actions that you'll ever handle. But it's a very inherently weak action. And that was the other thing that the Army noticed when they tested these captured 1893 Spanish Mausers. They realized the 7mm Mauser cartridge is a really good cartridge. It's a lot more powerful than the 30-40 Krag.
The United States eventually moves on from the Krag-Jørgensen rifle design to a vastly more modern, manually operated bolt-action repeating rifle design in the form of the 1903 rifle. The 1903 combines all the best that the Mauser design by that point had to offer. It's delivered with a little bit of an American flavor, so it's a different sighting system, a slightly more precise sighting system. Early model 1903 rifles are chambered for the 30 caliber 03 cartridge, 30-03, but that doesn't last long. The cartridge has its drawbacks and its shortcomings. Then eventually the United States adopts a cartridge in 1906 that is an improved version of the 30 caliber cartridge, and that's the cartridge that will eventually go on to fight both World Wars 30-06.
So the 1903 Springfield was sort of a compromise gun. It was the first U.S. military family of arms that there was not both a carbine for cavalry and a long rifle for the infantry. It was a compromised barrel length. So by about 1906, 1907, the lines of the 03 Springfield are there. What this gun is going to look like throughout its service life is pretty much established.
They made ultimately more than 3 million model 1903 Springfields, again, from 1903, right at the turn of the century, all the way up until July of 1944. So that is a huge production run. And interestingly enough, it bears mentioning that although the 03 Springfield was the official issue arm of the U.S. Army during World War I, they actually couldn't make enough of them to fully arm the American Expeditionary Force heading to France in 1917. And so ultimately, 3 out of every 4 American doughboys fighting in France are armed with the US model of 1917, which is based on the British pattern 1914. But the 1917 never becomes an official US Army issue arm. It is always still the 1903 Springfield. And right after the war, 1919 to 1920, US Army, they look at both of these guns and they say, yeah, we still prefer the 03 Springfield. And so the 03 Springfield is the mainstay into the 1920s, into the 1930s, until you get to the adoption of the iconic, of course, M1 Garand.
By the 1920s, with the advent of semi-automatic rifles and submachine guns, of course machine guns in World War I, it was thought that a semi-automatic rifle was really going to make the difference on the battlefield.
The work is done mainly at Springfield Armory by 2 engineers, one of which the government hires at a very expensive rate of compensation, Arwen Pedersen. And Pedersen goes to Springfield. He designs what he believes is the perfect cartridge for a semi-auto service rifle, and that's .276 Pedersen. He then designs a toggle delayed blowback operating rifle for that cartridge. All the while, this engineer that we all now know, named John Cantius Garand, while working at Springfield, he goes in a bit of a different direction. He's designing a gas-operated service rifle, whereas Pedersen is designing something that's toggle delayed blowback. Garand eventually comes up with a rugged and robust rifle that feeds from a 10-round in-block clip, feeding the .276 cartridge. That rifle goes into some trials. Then, eventually, the government realizes that this rifle is great, this cartridge is great, but there was an interest in maybe developing a rifle in .30 caliber.
Garand was a master machinist, and without his talent for knowing how to build the gun, that gun could never have been made. The receiver on a Garand was the result of more than 150 individual machine cuts, and this is in the days prior to any sort of computer control of the machine, so this was the kind of undertaking that just is not seen today at all.
The Garand rifle, as adopted, used an unusual gas system. It was called gas trap. There was actually a chamber up near the muzzle, and as the bullet passed through, some of the expanding gas would go into that chamber, and then it would activate the operating rod. Well, it turns out that wasn't really the better mousetrap. The better mousetrap was to drill a port through the barrel, and the gas would go through that hole and then move the operating rod. And so by 1941, you've got a really, really fine infantry rifle.
The M1 Garand, of course, serves incredibly well on the battlefield. The United States is the only major military power engaged in the Second World War with a general issue rifle that is a semi-automatic. And that's a big deal when you're going up against bolt-action designs like the German 98K that is a bolt-action manually operated design with a 5-round internal box magazine. The M1 Garand, it uses this unique C-shaped end-block clip that holds 8 rounds. It's fed through the top of the action, and it is a significant game changer in terms of infantry firepower.
We get to see the M1 shine because the M1 is already at its best. The design has already been threshed out by the time that it begins fighting the Second World War. In contrast, the M16, it begins fighting while it's still technically being designed and developed. And the result is then that the M1 rifle that fights World War II, it develops a mystique that's still with it to this very day, where everyone thinks that it's the perfect weapon system, that it cannot be stopped. I, for one, am a huge fan. I think it's one of the best rifle designs of the 20th century.
The M1 Garand is made in huge numbers during the Second World War and even into the post-war era. Ultimately, they made something in the neighborhood of 5.5 million M1 rifles until the mid-1950s. And that is just a tremendous number of guns, particularly considering how complicated of an action and receiver it is to make.